Hello world, welcome back to the Razor RC. Today we are doing the full review of the brand new Team Corrales Sketer 4S. This is a brand new 110 scale electric four-wheel drive monster truck, 4S capable, and has been on the market for about a week. Big shout out to Team Corrales for sending this out for review. Not just for sending it out for review, but honestly having the, let's just say, cojones to allow channels to express their true opinions about the car. As most of you probably know, most RC manufacturers send out cars to review to channels and kind of implicitly or explicitly just want the Disney version, just want the unicorns and rainbow version of their vehicles. And Team Corrales, I think, is a little bit different. They actually want people to express their true opinions. So big shout out to them, and thanks for sending this out. The way this review works is we are going to grade it in 7 different categories, giving it a rating from 1 to 5 stars, and is graded on a curve. So competitors to the Sketer are going to be things like the Traxxas Max V2, which I also own, something like an Arrma Kraton 4S, which has been back ordered for over a year now, so can't really get one of those, but I did have a Kraton 4S, so very familiar with that platform. But yeah, 4S 110 scale monster truck. This is kind of a long wheelbase version, basically the same size as a short course truck or a 1/8 scale buggy, exact same dimensions, same wheelbase, same length, all that kind of stuff. Just has a monster truck style body and monster truck tire style wheels. So we're gonna give a rating from 1 to 5 stars. 3 stars would mean it's average in its class. Doesn't mean it's bad. It's just kind of about typical for something you would find in the 4S 110 scale monster truck class. 4 stars would mean above average. 5 stars would mean best in class. And then 2 stars obviously below average, and 1 star would basically mean worst in class. So yeah, this is graded on a curve, and we're gonna see how this performed. And the first category we're going to cover is the electronics, and that's referring to the radio, receiver, motor, ESC, and servo. So the Sketer comes with the brand new CT2R radio. It's a 2.4 gigahertz radio. Takes 4 AA's, no external antenna, nice foam wheel, pretty basic trigger, which actually feels pretty good. Then all your standard adjustments, steering, servo reversing, throttle reversing, trims, and steering dual rate. This is an upgrade over the S2R radio. The S2R radio is okay. I felt a little cheap for an RTR radio, but the CT2R is definitely an improvement. Only part that I felt is a little bit of a downgrade is the handle doesn't have the rubberized grip as the S2R, but the controls, everything actually feel quite a bit better. The range seems better as well. I normally just tuck my antenna inside the receiver box, but on the S2R radio and receiver, that was not possible. It would basically wouldn't work if you tuck that in, but yeah, I like to just enclose in the receiver box, not having an external antenna, and it works totally fine with the CT2R, at least if you're not doing like long speed, long distance runs. So that is an improvement. I like the radio. Motor wise, this is this Curon 725 motor. It seems like a 68 millimeter long can motor. I measured the diameter. That measures at 40 millimeters with the fans. Without the fans, it's about 37 millimeters. So kind of a 36 by 68 or 37 by 68 millimeter can motor. 2150 kV. Seems pretty high quality. Actually, definitely very high quality looking piece. Machined really, really well. Nice laser etched engraving on the can. Power seems totally fine. I think it's undergeared even a little bit, so you could definitely overgear or increase the teeth on the pinion a little bit and get a little more speed. ESC wise, this is the Toro X135 ESC. So as far as I can tell, pretty much looks like a Max 10 SCT ESC from Hobbywing, but it's been upgraded. The regular Max 10 SCT is a 4S 120 amp ESC, probably something that comes like on the Arrma Kraton 4S. I don't know the exact brand is the same, but it looks very similar. But this has been upgraded to 135 amps. Also features some capacitors directly on the battery, so it gives you a little more of that initial punch. No voltage sag there, so really nice ESC. A lot of programming options, including things like drag brake, even like LiPo cutoff, so you can adjust the different LiPo cutoffs depending on your batteries. That's really, really nice. Servo wise, this is the what is the CRHV 7225 servo. I think it's a servo that came on their 6S V2s. Pretty good servo, actually quite fast, 0.414 seconds per 60 degrees, I believe, and it's a 25 kilogram centimeter servo, so fairly powerful, fairly fast. Metal gear, takes a 25 tooth standard servo. So overall, on the electronic side, I do think this is above average. I think the servo is definitely above average. The ESC is above average. The radio, kind of average-ish. Motor seems higher quality than your standard, max motor or whatever. Pretty good motor. So overall, electronics-wise, I'm going to give it 4 stars. Above average as compared to its competitors. So yeah, one of the advantages, I think, of the Sketer 4S. Build refers to how this vehicle came from the manufacturer. Were there any defects? Did it run out of the box? Were the discs filled? Were the shocks filled? Yeah, and for the most part, everything was put together really, really well. Shocks, I took them apart, changed the oil. Those are filled really perfectly to the right amount. All the screws, everything was put together quite nicely. Even some little things that I found were a weakness on my 6S V2s, like these little, I don't know what you call them, like nuts or whatever you call them, on the screws. On the actual steering links, they had the right amount of thread lock. These little 17 millimeter hexes don't have like red Loctite like some other manufacturer out there, so I did take those apart. Those are totally fine. So yeah, overall the vehicle was put together really well. Some minor complaints, one of my tires came unglued a little bit, so I did have to add a little glue here on the bottom. So just something you definitely want to check periodically. You should really do that with all your RC cars. Other things, the receiver wire is loose in the box, and also actually the receiver itself is not taped down or anything. I guess that's the way Team Crowley intended it to be, because all my V2s were the same way. The receiver is just kind of loose in the receiver box. I don't know, not sure why they do that. Maybe they think it'll be protected a little bit better. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I taped that down and just tuck the antenna wire inside the receiver box. But yeah, overall, I think the build was above average. I'm going to give it 4 stars. Really, the only minor complaint I had was one of the tires. Just check the glue on it periodically, especially if you're sending it, jumping it like 20 feet high, because those impacts can definitely let go if the tires are not glued 100% correctly. So I think this may be the only channel that actually has a design category, and to me this is super important. I know a lot of people don't really care about design. All they care about is how fast does it go and can they jump it into a tree and have it not break. But for me personally, I do think the design is super important, and looking at this vehicle, it is ridiculous. I mean, there's been a lot of interest in this RC car over the last week or two, and honestly, I think a big reason why is when you look at the design of this thing, it is full on beast mode. So the first thing I would say is that it is based off an 8-scale buggy style chassis. I wouldn't be surprised if they came out with a buggy version of this, or even use this chassis as the basis for some of their 6S vehicles in the future. I have no idea if that's what they plan to do, but this thing is basically a full-on 1/8 scale, like super beefed up, super reinforced 8-scale chassis. They took pretty much everything they ever learned about their 6S 1/8 scale vehicles and just applied it to this, because looking at it, it's everything I ever broke on a 6S. Now, I had a Dementor V2, I also have a Punisher V2, and everything I ever broke on those cars, they basically fixed in that. So starting with the shocks, they upgraded the rear shock rod ends. They add adjustable massive turnbuckles here in the back. They added basically a tower-to-tower brace, or if you want to call it tower to center diff to tower brace, aluminum reinforced, massive aluminum reinforcements up here in the front. Shock towers are massive. I think they're 5 millimeter shock towers, hugely durable. They added shock cap protectors here on the top, aluminum shocks, of course. Added spring steel outdrives. That was one area that people felt wore kind of quickly on the basically the outdrives. I think they used slightly shorter drive shafts. That was another area that, under massive flex, you could bend the drive shafts. Redesigned the chassis. They actually have a straightened out servo, which I really like. The old one was kind of angled. They did redesign these center braces. So these were plastic. They're still plastic, but they're sort of these zero flex chassis guards. The front end has been completely redesigned. That was another area that I felt was a weak point, where basically this hinge pin brace could break, the screws could strip out of the diff cases, but this whole thing is like massively re-engineered. It's almost like quadruple braced between the shock tower. The shock tower is mounted to the top. It's mounted here on the bottom, even mounted up here in the front. There's like a diff guard. So if you look at this, there's like a diff case there, and then an additional guard that goes around the diff case. That's just crazy. I've never seen that on an RC car before, but that's gonna protect your diff case even more than before. And then kind of your usual stuff: pivot ball suspension, massive beefy steering blocks. They did redesign these. I'm actually running extended or wide steering blocks and wide rear hubs to add a little bit of width, but they did redesign the steering blocks to add more durability so they don't pop out. So this thing is just crazy amount of durability. Aluminum diff case. They got this foam shock bumper here on the top to protect the body. I could go on and on and on, and I did cover quite a bit of these things in the unboxing. But yeah, as you can see, the design on this thing is outstanding. So overall, design wise, this is best in class for sure. 5 stars, and certainly one of the strongest points. So the Sketer is a pretty interesting car, and I like to spend a lot of time trying to understand what it was designed for, how it drives, how it performs. And when I talk about performance, I'm really talking about a lot of different things. I'm talking about speed, of course, how powerful is the motor, how well does it accelerate, but I'm also talking about the handling, how does it actually drive, how does it jump and land, how does it accelerate and brake. And in this category, I think it's outstanding. Handling wise, I think this is best in class. It pretty much drives just like an A-scale buggy with monster truck tires. It's got the handling, the steering, the drivability. Certainly, if I wanted to race like a 4S monster truck, I would pick this over any other 4S RTR monster truck out there. So in that category, I think it's outstanding. Power-wise, I think it's kind of typical. It is geared a little bit lower, so the top speed I think is about 43 miles per hour, but that doesn't really reflect how powerful this motor is. When I talk about how powerful it is, I'm not talking about top speed. I'm talking about like how much power is in this motor and ESC combination. I think it's pretty good. I think you could definitely gear it up and have it still run fairly cool as well. So power wise, it's fine. Jumping and landing, that's probably the area where I think this was designed not really to be a stunt truck. So it is not a stunt truck. The wheels are certainly on the smaller side. They're sort of 3-inch wheels. Not massive. The foam is a little more on the medium compound rather than being like a super soft style compound, so they don't balloon a lot. So jumping and landing, you can do backflips with this thing. I do have videos out there doing backflips. Possible to do single backflips for sure. Tailboat backflips would be fairly difficult, I think, out of the box without like a giant ramp. I'm sure you could do it if you had a big enough ramp and a long enough runway. But yeah, jumping and landing, it does chassis slap a bit in the rear. It does have adjustable droop screws front and back. So, if you're doing big jumps, I would, basically tighten those droop screws, give you a little more droop, give you a little more suspension travel. I also have a video on how to basically widen the Sketer, give it another 30 millimeters of width, and allow you to run bigger tires. So performance-wise, I'm gonna give above average score 4 stars. I think this is definitely better than your standard 4S monster truck. Steering-wise, handling-wise, best in class. Jumping and landing, it's not really designed for that, so I'm gonna give it kind of an average score in that area. I think this is really more of a do-everything type monster truck. Forms a good basis, sort of a good platform to do whatever you want. Now, all the 6S arms, knuckles, steering blocks, hubs, all that stuff will fit right on. So if you want to make like a 6S Dementor, I think you could do that. Just get the longer arms, maybe the longer steering blocks as well if you want the super wide width. This is basically a 6S platform. I wouldn't be surprised if the new 6S cars, whenever they come out, I would assume they update them at some point, come with some of these basic improvements, because as far as I can tell, this is a 6S vehicle and you can make it whatever you want for an 8-scale vehicle. Durability is always on everyone's mind, and so the big question is, how durable is the Sketer for us? I'm going to break this into a couple different areas. The first one is definitely the chassis. This chassis is the most massively over-engineered, reinforced chassis I think you can buy. I don't think there is a more massively engineered chassis. This to me seems unbreakable. I've landed on the wheelie bar from about 20 feet straight down, basically like a lawn dart, but on the tail. That did break the wheelie bar, so I'm not actually running a wheelie bar. I normally take wheelie bars off of my vehicles. I know that sounds kind of weird to most people, but I usually don't run a wheelie bar. Front bumper, it normally has a bumper here in the front. I also cracked that on about the 4th or 5th, nose plant from about 15, 20 feet high. Eventually that thing did break, so I'm not running that. But the 6S vehicles, honestly, like the Dementor or the Kronos or Punisher, they just run this skid plate, this wraparound skid plate. This is the bumper to me, and with that diff case cover, I feel like it's totally fine. So I don't actually run the bumper either. I know most people, I think that's really weird as well, but those are the two things that broke. So the chassis wise, even with those direct impacts, chassis did not bend, shock tires did not bend, this tower brace did not bend, did not break any hinge pins here in the center, did not bend any dog bones or anything like that. The steel up drives totally fine, diff cases are totally fine. So yeah, chassis wise, this has got to be the best in class chassis. I would give it 5 stars. The steering blocks. Now they did redesign the steering blocks. They did add additional reinforcement so these things don't pop out. I think those are totally fine. I never really had problems with the 6S steering blocks, which are the same design, just they improved it for the Sketer. So that was not really a concern for me, but did not break any of those, did not bend any of these upper arms or turnbuckles or anything. The sway bars didn't even fall off. Shock shafts are totally fine. Did not break a shock rod in, which I did on my 6S. The only area I feel like is still kind of average durability is the arms. So these arms are just continued on from their V2 6S vehicle. So these are the same Python arms or Radix arms that you had before. I did break an arm, so that I think it's average durability. Pretty much when I landed completely on one corner, broken arm, but everything else was totally fine. Shock was fine, upper arm was fine, turnbuckles were fine, all that kind of stuff. And then the last area I did actually bend is one of these Ackerman bars. So these are 70-75 Ackerman bars. Mine is slightly bent. Now I am running basically the wide hubs with bigger tires, and that's when it bent. So I'm not sure if that's just too much force, too much leverage on the turnbuckle, but the turnbuckle didn't break, oddly enough. Just that little Ackerman bar did bend. I haven't bent it back. It runs totally fine, but probably something I'll do at some point. So durability wise, yeah, I think this is really good. Chassis wise, pretty much indestructible. I would be shocked if anyone could bend the chassis. Knuckles, everything seemed totally fine. Just the arms, I feel like, are average durability. So overall in the durability category, this is a huge step up from the V2 6S line. Those, in my opinion, were a little below average in durability. I think this is above average in durability. I'm gonna give it 4 stars because the chassis, everything is massively engineered. Probably the arms, the only thing I might stock up on 1 or 2 of those. Maybe a bumper if you run a bumper, but I honestly don't run a bumper. Team Corelli is a smaller brand here in the US where I am based. I don't know how things are in Europe. I don't know how things are in Japan, other countries. All I can really talk about is my experiences in the US. And Team Corelli is a smaller brand. I think prior to about 3 years ago, they were pretty hard to find, really focused more on the entry-level stuff or the on-road stuff. But in the last 2 or 3 years, they've really been coming out swinging with their full off-road lineup, their 6S lineup, their A-scale stuff, and you can see that the dealer network has been growing and growing and certainly is bigger than before. But still, overall in the US, Team Corelli is a little bit of a smaller brand, a little bit harder to find parts. My local hobby shop is a Team Corelli dealer, and they did have a couple parts, like when I broke my arm, they did have that arm in stock, but for the most part, not everything is going to be in stock at your local hobby shop. Now, the good thing is they do always have parts in stock. HRP is a local distributor in the US. They generally have most of the parts. I don't think they carry absolutely every Team Corelli part. And if there's some special part you really need, you can actually order it from Belgium directly. So if there's some part you really need, it is available. That's unlike some other manufacturers where stuff comes out of stock. But in the support and maintenance category, I'm going to give it below average score. I'm going to give it 2 stars just because most brands are better supported here in the US. Certainly US brands are a little more popular and able to find parts. So for the most part, if your local hobby shop doesn't carry the part you need, you will have to order online, maybe wait some time. So in that area, I think it is below average. The other thing is the maintenance on this thing. It's not bad, but a couple of things can be difficult. There is extra bracing to super beefify this thing, but I think it does make it a little more difficult to work on because there's so many things just bolted together to strengthen it. But I think on the maintenance side, a little more difficult. So support and maintenance wise, I'm going to give it 2 stars. Probably the only area I feel is a little below average. Hopefully HRP, Team Corrale, all the US supply chain companies kind of get together, get their part support a little more widespread. I think as Team Corrale sort of takes off in the US, I think that will improve. But today it is below average, 2 stars. The Sketer 4S sells for $489.99 here in the United States. Other competitors, the Traxxas Max V2 sells for $570. The Armored Creighton 4S, when it was sold, it sold for $400. Now the Creighton had a plastic chassis, it had plastic shocks, plastic outdrives, plastic diffs, plastic steering rack. Everything was plastic pretty much on the Armored Creighton 4S and sold for $400, which is $90 less than this. Now the Traxxas Max V2 sells for $570, again $80 more, but it again has plastic chassis, plastic drive shafts. The whole car is pretty much plastic, and it's an additional $80. So when you look at this vehicle, you can just see how much money was poured into this thing. My value category, I think, is different than most people. Value to me is what you get in the box, what you actually pay for versus the price that they charge you. So it has nothing to do with performance. We already have a performance category. It has nothing about the durability. We already have a durability category. All it really relates to is what they actually send you in the box. And looking at this thing, is this a $490 car? And honestly, I think they killed it on the price. I don't know how they kept it under $500 because every other vehicle of this quality, of this much metal, the spring steel outdrives, the machined aluminum disc, the aluminum center differential, the massive turnbuckles, 17mm hexes, the aluminum shocks, the whole thing has just tons of value to me in the box. I think it's class leading. I know $490 sounds like a lot of money, but when you compare it to what else is out there for $490, there is no comparison. This is pretty much an A scale vehicle, but they charge you like a 4S 10 scale price. So in the value category, I do think this is best in class, 5 stars. I don't know how they're able to squeeze so much value in the box. I mean, you just got a little holder for your on-off button. It's just crazy how much value. The straps for the battery system, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, value wise, this is best in class, 5 stars. I'm just amazed that they're able to charge that little to me for this much car. So definitely a 5-star rating. So final thoughts on the Team Corrale Sketer 4S. Brand new platform, Team Corrale, 4S capable, very, very impressive vehicle. Overall, when you look at the design, best in class. Look at the performance, certainly above average, excellent. Durability is above average. Overall, value-wise, it's just a steal, I think, at $490. Not a small amount of money, but when you look at what you actually pay for versus what you actually get, I think it's super impressive. I'm quite excited to see this new platform from Team Corrale because I think they kind of took direct aim at the RTR market, certainly at the 4S market. When you compare this to pretty much any other 4S vehicle, just put them side by side, and I think you'll be shocked at how much better this thing is designed. It's just a beast of a vehicle. Only areas I feel like are a little bit weak. Hopefully they can improve their supply chain and their dealer network. There is a website, dealers.corrale.com, where you can find where your local hobby shop is. But not every hobby shop is going to carry Team Corrale. Most of them, still a bit of a smaller brand, is not as popular as the other brands. Anyways, that's it for the Team Corrale Sketer 4S. Awesome monster truck. I think it's kind of an all-around basher, and we certainly need to see what else comes out there on the market. But in my opinion, excellent vehicle. Overall, I'd give it 4 stars, definitely above average, and one of the best available. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe, and add notifications buttons. Look for more videos soon. Thanks for watching.